All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of year. Your rookie drafts are just around the corner for the 2025 Dynasty Fantasy Football season. So, you know exactly what we're going to do. We're going to hop into our first rookie mock draft of the 2025 season, go through the first 12 picks for a Superflex Dynasty League with landing spots. Let's not waste any time. Let's hop right into today's video. All right, so for the purpose of today's video, I used NFL.com's 2025 mock NFL drafts. I mainly went off of Charles Davis's most recent draft on the NFL website because his was the most recent. But I also had to include a couple other selections from other analysts as well. So let's just go through this rookie mock draft with these landing spots. Some of them are interesting, so make sure you guys stay tuned. Starting with the 1.1, there's no surprise here whatsoever. It's Ashton Jeanty. And this specific mock draft that Charles Davis mock draft had him landing with the Dallas Cowboys at pick 12 overall, which isn't the team that you see pop up the most frequently when it comes to potential landing spots for Ashton Jeanty, but is definitely still one of the teams that is a potential landing spot for Jeanty for sure. And overall, I'm okay with this spot. I think there are more attractive landing spots just because the state of the Cowboys right now is a little bit up in the air, but wherever he goes, he is still the clear-cut 1.1 overall selection in your upcoming rookie drafts, in my opinion, no matter what, and everybody's opinion, right? He's just way too talented of a player to pass up. And really, regardless of your needs on your team, whether you're contending or not contending, if you have the 1.1, you're probably not contending unless you traded your way into it. But nonetheless, no matter what here, this is the best player, and you just have to take him off of the board. When we look at Jeanty as a total prospect, I mean, obviously his balance, footwork, vision, explosiveness, big play ability is all there. A comp that you see a lot for Jeanty is that of Alvin Kamara, but no matter what, he is a first-round offensive weapon. He's going to succeed really behind any offensive line, I think, as a rookie. And overall, this is probably most similar to when we saw Bijan Robinson in terms of fantasy football. When we saw Bijan Robinson get drafted just 2 years ago, I think that Ashton Jeanty is really going to become a player in fantasy football who we see selected in the first round of redraft leagues as well, because that hype's just going to continue to build and build, especially if he does go to a team where he is the clear-cut workhorse #1 running back. So the Cowboys, for me, that works. You look at what he did in his collegiate career. It's great. You look what he did last year, arguably the best season ever for a running back in college football. So you guys know the deal here. I don't need to break it down super extensively. For me, it does not matter what the landing spot is. And for 99% of you guys out there, it does not matter. Cowboys, maybe not my favorite, but it is totally okay with me because the Cowboys is going to be a clear #1 running back. And overall, he has to be the clear #1 overall selection, regardless of your format and all of your upcoming rookie drafts. All right, let's move along to the 1.2, and we're looking at Cam Ward landing with the Cleveland Browns. Once again, basing this off of that Charles Davis draft. And I mean, a lot of potential mock drafts out there actually have Abdul Carter going to the 1.2 overall to the Cleveland Browns, but nonetheless, I'm okay once again, regardless of where Cam Ward lands, as long as he is in a position where he's going to be the starting quarterback, right? And so we're looking at teams like the Browns, right? But also the Titans, the Giants, the Jets. Maybe we see the Saints move up. We'd also have to see the Jets move up to get Cam Ward. And I know there's a lot of rumors right now that the Giants are going to trade into that 1.1 overall spot to select Cam Ward, and maybe that does happen, but for the purpose of today's video, we're looking at him going to the Cleveland Browns. I guess the ghost of Deshaun Watson is still looming there, but at the end of the day, if the Browns do select him with the 1.2 overall, they are drafting him to be a starting quarterback. I know that there are some reservations when it comes to Cam Ward as a prospect. This is obviously not the best overall quarterback class going into the season, but what we do get out of Cam Ward is he's a big game quarterback. Does require a little leap of faith here and there, but he has that confidence, and overall, that mentality is what can really lead him to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. The stats aren't bad, especially looking at last season, right? And he has had a long collegiate career, but there are other quarterbacks like Michael Penix last year who had a long-lasting collegiate career before he went into the NFL, and now nobody really even talks about that. So for me, this is I'm doing a super flex mock rookie draft here, right? So we have these quarterbacks popping up, unless there's just a clear-cut generational talent like Ashton Jeanty there. I mean, we're going for these quarterbacks first and foremost off of the board. So Cam Ward, I think, has the best potential to get the most overall snaps in his rookie season at the quarterback position. So I think it's pretty obvious here, really, regardless of what team he's landing on, we're taking him at the 1.2 overall. All right, moving along to the 1.3, I'm going with Shedeur Sanders in a super flex format. Once again, I'm sticking with the quarterback position. It is always going to be your clear-cut, most important position in your Superflex Dynasty league. So listen, I know it's a bag of emotions here. When it comes to Sanders, there are some torn opinions on Sanders, but if he gets selected to a team like the Tennessee Titans, who this one's kind of interesting, but that's where in that draft he is going to #1 overall to the Titans. And for me, it's the same thing with Cam Ward, right? Wherever Sanders goes, the Giants, the Titans, Browns, Saints, Jets, whoever it's going to be, if he's going to walk in there and be the starting quarterback, or at least have the potential to be the starting quarterback in his rookie season in a super flex format, you have to take that quarterback, especially in a very thin quarterback class, like we already mentioned earlier in the video. Just think back to last year, people brushing off Bo Nix, like, I don't want any piece of this. Some people even brushing off like Drake May in last year's rookie drafts as well, although it was a little bit more of a steep quarterback class overall. But those guys went on to be solid starters who are now very valuable players in dynasty formats. So you just can't overlook this. There is a lot of upside here. We look at Sanders as a prospect, right? Obviously, in terms of his stature and arm talent as well, he's a little bit below average compared to NFL quarterbacks, but he is a clean quarterback. Only threw 10 interceptions last year compared to 37 total touchdowns. Obviously has a confidence, some of those attributes that you want in a starting quarterback, but some franchises might be a little wary of, almost like Baker Mayfield coming out of his collegiate career, for a loose example. And sometimes that confidence turns out to be a very good thing, but we know everything that's tied to Sanders being Deion Sanders' son, and et cetera, et cetera. You guys know the story here, but nonetheless, for me, in super flex formats, if there's a potential quarterback there, there has to be very, very, very good talent at the running back and wide receiver position if I'm going to take one of those positions over a quarterback in a super flex format, right? So for me, I'm going with Sanders. I don't know about this landing spot. It could definitely happen. The NFL draft has that tendency to surprise us, but I don't know if he's going to end up with the Titans, but I do think this was an interesting draft for sure. So in today's rookie mock, he lands with the Tennessee Titans. We'll see what happens. All right, moving along to the 1.4, we've got my guy, Tet McMillan, who lands with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I have seen a couple mock NFL drafts where he does land with the Buccaneers. I've seen other landing spots that I like a smidge more, maybe like the Washington Commanders, for example, but I'm still completely okay with this landing spot. I actually think it would be a very good landing spot, but I also think we have to kind of understand if Tet McMillan is drafted to the Buccaneers, and we're probably looking at a circumstance where Chris Godwin has hit free agency and is not on this roster, and that would still leave, obviously, Mike Evans as a wide receiver 1, and then sophomore wide receiver Jalen McMillan as a wide receiver 2, with some targets still going to guys like Cade Otton and my boy Rashad White, maybe a little Bucky Irving, although he mainly gets it done on the ground. Nonetheless, this is an offense that's going to throw the football a lot, going to be led by Baker Mayfield, has done a lot of good things over the last 2 years, although I do know that they're on their 3rd offensive coordinator in the past 3 seasons. Nonetheless, there's going to be opportunity here, and sometimes that's a good thing for a rookie wide receiver to go into a situation where there are other guys in front of him, especially a great veteran like Mike Evans. Sometimes it hurts a rookie, though, like we saw with JSN in his rookie season with Metcalf and Lockett in front of him. Nonetheless, I've been a fan of Tet McMillan early on in this process of looking at this rookie class. And I know in some circumstances out there in terms of rankings and whatnot, he's moved back here and there and whatever. Some people don't fully like his profile, and there's other wide receivers kind of moving up in this class. But for me, I'm sticking where I am. Tet McMillan has been my favorite from a early point on, and I'm trying to not let all the noise from the draft, combine, and all this stuff coming up get to me, right? So I'm sticking with Tet McMillan, and I do actually really like this landing spot of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I am also kind of in the boat that if he goes to a team where he can get those clear-cut number one targets, I'm completely okay with that. We've seen some mocks like where he goes as early as the Patriots. We see other mocks where he goes as late as the Washington Commanders. So we'll see what happens, but really, regardless of where Tet McMillan goes, I'm okay taking him at the 1.4, but I do really like this landing spot of the Buccaneers, so he gets an added boost in today's rookie mock draft. We look overall, I mean, he has all-pro potential, right? Good length, good athleticism, great football IQ when you watch his tape as well. Smooth route runner overall. And I do think that he can go up and get that 50-50 ball, in my opinion, when you look at his tape. But like I said, there are some mixed opinions on Tet McMillan and really just this rookie wide receiver class as a whole. But I'm sticking with my guns here. I like Tet McMillan at the 1.4. And hey, the Bucs, I think, could end up actually being a very good landing spot for him. All right, moving along to the 1.5, we've got Travis Hunter landing with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I really like this landing spot because I think you look at things right. We get a Trevor Lawrence back and healthy, and then you got a great wide receiver one there in Brian Thomas Jr. And like I just mentioned, right, sometimes it's very good for a rookie to step in, be a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. And I think in this circumstance, even with Gabe Davis still under contract for the Jags, a wide receiver 2 spot would be great for Travis Hunter. And I mean, I think when you look at Travis Hunter as a whole, a lot of people are going to say this is the best player in the entire draft. But when it comes to a fantasy perspective, right, we just kind of have this looming question of how much defense is Travis Hunter going to play this coming season? How much offense is he going to play? Whatever team does draft him, are they going to allow him to play both ways? Right now, the verdict is he's going to play both ways. So what does that really mean from a fantasy perspective? We'll find out. But as we move along, or as you move along in your rookie draft coming up, it's just too good of a talent to pass up once we're 5 or 6 spots in. I don't see him lasting any longer than that, and he could surely go earlier than that as well. But I think the Jags a great landing spot for Travis Hunter. You look at what he did last season as a receiver, nearly 1,300 receiving yards, off of 96 receptions, and those 15 receiving touchdowns as well. But like I said, the question is how much defense is he going to end up playing? How much offense is he going to end up playing? I mean, as good of a wide receiver as Travis Hunter is, a lot of people are going to argue he's a better defensive player, and then some people would argue the opposite. So we'll see what happens here, but I love this landing spot with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they would bring him in and potentially definitely use him on the defensive side of things because they need help on the defensive side of things. But you look at how he could line up in this offense with the players that they already have, especially alongside Brian Thomas Jr. I think this would be a very good thing for fantasy. And like I said, as your rookie draft progresses, it's just going to be way too hard to pass up on the talent that Travis Hunter is. All right, let's move along to the 1.6 and take a look at Omarion Hampton at the running back position. And once again, some of these landing spots a little bit interesting, but I do think that you need to prepare yourself for some potential interesting landing spots because a lot of times we go into the NFL draft like with this perceived notion that we know where certain players are going to land, and they get drafted by a team that you're not thinking whatsoever. Think back to like Zach Charbonnet. You know, this was a player that a lot of people thought in his rookie season would be a clear-cut RB1. A lot of people had him as their RB2 or 3 in their rookie rankings. And he got drafted to the Seahawks with Kenneth Walker. And he definitely showed a lot more this past season when Kenneth Walker was hurt due to the opportunities that he got. But his rookie season, in terms of where he was drafted in some early rookie drafts that year, well, didn't really pan out for you. So I do think you always need to be prepared for teams that you're not really expecting to take a player that you think might go to a different team. And Omarion Hampton going to the Steelers is not my favorite, but we do know that Najee Harris is set to be a free agent, so the opportunity would absolutely be there. So at the same time, I don't hate it. Actually, when you look at his rookie profile and what he did in college, he definitely fits that kind of Pittsburgh Steeler mentality. So I liked Omarion Hampton regardless, straight up. He had a very good combine, ran a 4.46 40-yard dash, had a great season this past year in college, over 1,600 rushing yards, 17 total touchdowns, 38 receptions, 373 receiving yards. So, you know, keep in mind, sometimes those receptions are a little bit limited in are at the collegiate level, but still 38 receptions is fantastic, right? That's going to translate directly into the NFL. But the main point I'm trying to make here is that in 2023, he also had a monster season, over 1,500 rushing yards, 16 total touchdowns, 29 receptions, and 222 total receiving yards. So it's been nothing but good things out of Omarion Hampton over the past 2 seasons. And this is another player like similar to Tet McMillan for me and for a lot of you guys out there, right? A lot of people taking a look at this class. Like Omarion Hampton is the clear cut RB2 in this rookie class, in my opinion. I don't think anybody's going to really have a huge argument over that, although I know some people are still a little bit up in the air in terms of who comes after Ashton Jeanty. But I think after the combine, like 99% of you guys, it's Hampton as the 1.2 in terms of rookie running backs, and clearly just the running back position. But overall, in terms of his collegiate career, I mean, he's extremely physically gifted. He's a big running back, right? At least a good 220 pounds at 6'1" in terms of his height, but still very explosive. And on top of that, has great lower body strength overall. So while he can kind of like slash and dash when you watch his film, overall, he still has that physical game as well. There are some critics out there who, at least if you're going to make a knock on Omarion Hampton, is that he's a bit boomer bust. So his landing spot couldn't matter due to what offensive line he's behind. But I mean, you always got to be a little bit nitty gritty when it comes to these evaluations, I suppose. But for me, the tape is there, the stats are there, the attributes are there as well. So I am kind of in the camp, like I would love to see the Chargers move up if they need to get Hampton, or maybe they're able to draft him without moving up. I love the landing spot of the Chargers for Omarion Hampton. I don't dislike the Steelers, the Raiders, or another team that comes up a lot in drafts as well. And of course, once again, I mean, any team in the first could end up taking Hampton. I do think he'll go in the first round. At very worst, you're looking early second round for Hampton, but I think there's a strong possibility that he is the second and the only other running back than Ashton Jeanty taken in the first round of the 2025 NFL draft. So we'll see what happens. I think the Steelers is a good landing spot, but I think there are better landing spots overall. The Chargers is where I'm hoping he lands. I think he would have just immediate impact, no doubt about it, if he's with the Chargers. If he's with the Steelers, still think he could have a great rookie season. So still really like him here at the 1.6 overall. All right, next up at the 1.7, we've got my guy Jaxson Dart, which at this point in the draft process and the rookie draft process, I don't want to say it's like unhinged or anything, but some people might disagree with this one for sure, or maybe they have him a little bit later in the first round or still kind of in the second round area. And there are a lot of skill position players in this draft, although it's not the strongest draft class at wide receiver. And some would argue running back, there's still a lot of really good running backs and wide receivers who have a lot of nice boom bust potential. So I could see a lot of those skill position guys that we're not going to talk about today be drafted before Jaxson Dart, as well as everyone else that we're talking about be drafted before him. But my personal belief is that Jaxson Dart is going to go in the first round. We talked about this on our stream a couple of nights ago. I think he's going to go in the first round of the 2025 NFL draft. And I just think that buzz is going to continue to build. And I thought it was really interesting because literally I just typed in 2025 NFL mock draft and chose the first one I saw, and that was the Charles Davis one because, like I said at the time I recorded this, that was the most recent one that came up that had been done, right? And it looks like he kind of agrees with me, right? Having Jaxson Dart go at the 1.3 overall to the New York Giants. And for me, if Dart goes in the first round, the most likely scenario is that he goes to a team that has a hole at quarterback because this is a very thin quarterback class coming out of the college level. And overall, it's not a great free agency whatsoever at the quarterback position, although there are some bridge quarterbacks out there for sure, and we'll see where they land and if they land to a team before the NFL draft. I would assume most of them are going to. But if Jaxson Dart goes to a team like the Giants who have a glaring hole at the position, I know they just re-signed Tommy DeVito, but that's not scaring me in terms of a potential day one starter here. And once again, like the other quarterbacks we talked about in today's video, whether it's the Browns or the Titans, who I don't think are going to have to go and get Jaxson Dart, but maybe they trade back. We'll find out, whether it's the Jets, the Saints, whoever. If it is one of these teams that he walks in and has the potential to start in his rookie season, then I'm drafting him in a super flex format. I absolutely am. Once again, think back to last year when people were brushing off Bo Nix, letting him fall to the second round, all that kind of stuff. And he is now a very, very valuable quarterback in Dynasty formats. And and redraft formats for that matter as well. And listen, I don't know if Jaxson Dart's going to be the next Bo Nix or anything. I'm not necessarily saying that, but when you are in these super flex formats, there is no more important position ever than the quarterback position. So if he gets drafted at the 1.3 overall to the Giants, absolutely I'm taking him as early as the 1.7 in a super flex format in my rookie draft. So we look at Jaxson Dart, right? Overall, he's an interesting prospect, has obviously played baseball and football. So he does have that natural kind of movement, big playmaking ability. And overall, I mean, he had success at Ole Miss, right, in that specific scheme at the end of the day. He does need to kind of improve in terms of his overall defensive reads and his just general fundamentals on how to attack different defenses when you really break down his collegiate film. But overall, I'm a fan of Jaxson Dart. I think he's one of these draft prospects who I wasn't thinking a ton about initially going into the process, right, and into the offseason, but he is growing on a lot of people who are into Dynasty fantasy football, who are into overall NFL football, right? And he's just one of those players who I think is definitely going to have the opportunity to walk in and have the potential to start in his rookie season. How well that's going to go, I don't know, but he does have some nice upside overall. And even if he doesn't, it just doesn't matter. As long as he has a chance to start, we have to take that chance on him when it comes to your rookie drafts coming up. When you look at what he did at the combine, I mean, he threw very well overall. He was definitely, in terms of the quarterback position, the one quarterback who absolutely helped his stock in the combine. And some of that stuff people absolutely don't care about. That's fair. But I can tell you, it's just one of those things that happens on a year-to-year basis. He's going to rise up in terms of his potential to get drafted. And I firmly believe that Jaxson Dart is going to go in the first round because it's such a thin quarterback class overall. I think he's the third and final quarterback taken in the third round of this draft. And that's part of it too. Like, there's not like a ton of quarterbacks who are likely to go in the second or third round. There's so much defensive talent in this draft, especially on the D line. There's a lot of depth at the running back position. There's a lot of good tight ends. So you look at the quarterbacks available after Jaxson Dart, I just think he really has a strong chance to go in the first round, like because of everything I just said, right? So many quarterbacks out there on free agency who are not going to necessarily be anything more than a bridge quarterback in just such a thin class. So overall, if he's there at the 1.7, I'm going to have a very difficult time passing him up coming up in our rookie drafts. All right, next up at the 1.8, we've got Matthew Golden coming out of Texas and landing with the Washington Commanders. I love this landing spot for Golden. And I mean, you've seen other wide receivers get mocked to the Commanders, and really any of these kind of first grade talents at the position, I absolutely love if they land with the Commanders. Golden had a fantastic combine overall, ran a 4.29, fast player when you look at his tape. But also, like, I think one of the most important things with his tape is when you watch Matthew Golden's tape is that he has the ability to go up and get the football. And you look at a lot of the throws from his quarterback, right? Speaking of a thin quarterback class, he has to adjust to the ball when you really break down his film, even from this last season with the success that Texas had. So, overall, Golden, a player who his movement skills should translate well to the NFL. And I think that kind of ability to both beat press and go up and get the ball are really going to help him in the league. He has good footwork. And I think the important thing on top of all that is that he's a very good yards after the catch type player. So when he's able to go up and get the football and then do something with it, that definitely speaks volume to what he could do at the NFL level. And then kind of besides the point, he has some attributes in terms of the return game as well. So that should help his NFL draft stock, which right now he's really rising or has risen on a lot of draft boards and NFL drafts out there, as well as rookie mock drafts out there, right? So I do think there's some stuff missing from his film that could attribute to him being like a clear-cut wide receiver one. And honestly, in this draft class, that's kind of the way for all the wide receivers. But we've got him landing with the Washington Commanders, and that is a great spot. He's going to have Terry McLaurin next to him. I think he would fit great into this Cliff Kingsbury offense. You got Deebo Samuel there as well, but I think Deebo is probably due for a season kind of similar to last year. He's going to be used in different ways, and we know the durability of Deebo at this point in his career, so I'm not super worried about it. And I really just think that Matthew Golden, regardless of Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel being there, can fit in perfectly into this scheme. Jaden Daniels in his sophomore season, continuing to make strides in that offense, all that stuff. So Matthew Golden going to the Commanders, I think would be absolutely perfect when you really break down his collegiate profile. And I'm not worried about Debo and McLaurin both being there. Like I said earlier in the video, sometimes that's a good thing for rookie wide receivers. Sometimes it limits them off the bat. But like I said, Debo, not the greatest durability. And as much as I love Terry McLaurin, he is getting up there a bit in age as well. So this is a good spot for Matthew Golden to land. Really nothing else to say here. This is a player who I think could be an absolute bargain in the first round of your upcoming rookie drafts. All right, next up at the 1.9, we got another wide receiver that's going to be Luther Burden, coming out of Missouri and landing with the Los Angeles Rams at pick 26. I actually had to go through a couple drafts on NFL.com before I found one where Luther Burden still went in the first round. So this is a player who initially going into the Dynasty offseason, quote unquote, was kind of like the 1.2. Some people even argued the 1.1 in terms of the wide receiver position for this class. And he's kind of fallen back a little bit. Not everyone loves his profile, doesn't think it's going to translate well to the NFL. I've seen him be compared to a player like Quentin Johnston, but then I've also seen people who have a lot of confidence in him still. And in terms of actual NFL analysis, people do have him at this point not really often going in the first round in terms of the upcoming NFL draft, but do have him definitely going in the second round. But I still like Luther Burden personally. Like I said, I like the other two wide receivers at this point, probably more for sure. Tet's still my number one guy. And the landing spot does matter here. But like for Matthew Golden, I absolutely love him going to the Commanders. I will say I really like this landing spot for Luther Burden, and that's why I'm okay with him at the 1.9. We know that Cooper Kupp was not going to be on the Rams going into next season, so it makes sense for them to draft a wide receiver. I know they just re-signed Tutu Atwell for the next 2 seasons. Still got a player like Jordan Whittington on that roster as well. And it's the Sean McVay offense. He can always make do with what's there for the most part, right? But it still makes sense for them to bring in somebody to line up alongside Puka Nacua. Although when you look at the team, they have a lot of needs elsewhere as well. But we know Matthew Stafford's going to be back next season. I always believe in the Sean McVay offense and that system. If Luther Burden comes in here, I think he could be very effective in that system, and it's a good landing spot for him and an offense that I believe in. So if he does go to the Rams, I'm okay with it. Once again, I had to go through quite a few mock drafts before I found one with Luther Burden still in the first round. So who knows what team he lands on, but I do think landing spot is very important for Luther Burden. You look at what he did in 2023 with over 1,200 receiving yards, 9 receiving touchdowns. Kind of came back a bit in 2024, 676 receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns, but definitely not bad by any measure, right? But just not quite as good as the other wide receivers that we went over statistically. Go through a lot of college profiles for Luther Burden. You're still going to see a lot of analysis that states him as a first-round talent, that he can do essentially everything that you need to do at the wide receiver position. Very athletic, still has the ability to win 50-50 balls, has good strong performances after the catch. Just some people would argue that his route running ability not quite there or as polished, you could say, but a lot of analysis out there is still very good on Luther Burden, but some of it's just not completely coming together. He is falling a bit back in overall rankings for a lot of people out there. But like I said, landing spot really matters. And for me, I like the situation with the Rams. So I would be okay taking a quote unquote gamble with Luther Burden at the 1.9. Next up at the 1.10, we've got Emeka Egbuka, who is a player that is kind of doing the opposite of Luther Burden. He's starting to kind of tink up overall in draft boards. And I will say that, well, in this draft, he was landing with the Houston Texans. This draft was done a few hours before the Texans traded for Christian Kirk from Jacksonville, right? But I think when you really break down the Texans going into last year, right? I mean, they were going in the season with Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell. Now they're going into 2025 with Nico Collins, but Stephon Diggs set to be a free agent, and then the future of Tank Dell very uncertain if he's going to be able to play in 2025 or not, and he's definitely going to miss some portion of 2024, if not the entire season, right? So it makes a lot of sense for the Texans to go out and draft a wide receiver. And you look at Egbuka as a collegiate player, right? I mean, you see it on the screen, right? He is basically a clone of JSN. And what's interesting, right, is when you break down his collegiate career, he has played alongside Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, JSN, Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, he has been there for the past 4 seasons. And one thing that may bring like some draft fatigue, quote unquote, to Egbuka is the fact that even though he's been behind so many good wide receivers, you still have heard about him as a potential prospect, but that's just what happens with Ohio State wide receivers, it feels like. So there's a large floor here and the ability to come in and play as a true wide receiver one when you look at his collegiate profile. I mean, overall, he had 8 games against ranked opponents, right? And he accumulated 51 receptions and 610 receiving yards in those games. Good long speed, good route running overall, good at getting that 50-50 ball or stressing defensive leverage, however you want to look at it. Just overall, all 3 levels of the field for the wide receiver position, he has got it there. You really break down a lot of college profiles for him out there. They're all fantastic. And like I said, when you put on his film, it feels like everything is there. So on top of that, I don't mind him going to a team like the Texans, playing alongside a player like Nico Collins. And on top of that, I haven't even mentioned it yet, but obviously he did play at the collegiate level with CJ Stroud, so reuniting them could lead to continued chemistry at the NFL level. So yeah, obviously this is a player that I feel really good about, I would say almost regardless of landing spot, but going to the Texans, I'm completely okay with it. And like I said, throw on his film, he looks great. A lot of you guys know that, some of you guys might not. Overall, definitely taking him at the 1.10. I think you could argue you could even go earlier in your upcoming rookie draft. All right, let's move along to the 1.11, and you've probably been wondering, what about those tight ends? And this is a good class when it comes to the tight end position, and maybe I was a little bit lazy by just throwing the next 2 guys here at the very end of this rookie draft, but I wanted to get through a lot of those skill position players that I have a lot of faith in, and I do think either the tight ends that we're about to talk about could go as early as like the 1.7, 1.8. It definitely depends on your team's needs and how much kind of belief you have in these 2 tight ends and their potential landing spots, but of course, for most of you guys, you're going to know their landing spots when you go into your rookie draft, so keep that in mind. But I do really like Colston Loveland, and we'll talk about Tyler Warren next, as you guys could probably expect. But I like Loveland a lot. I probably like Warren a tad bit more. But Colston Loveland is still a very good prospect at the end of the day. Reminds you a lot of like a Dalton Kincaid. Isn't always going to have the best ability to play in line. But at the end of the day, even if he doesn't have that great blocking capability, some can develop it at the tight end position. And on top of that, what he does offer is that he is a tall and long pass catcher who can go up and get the ball and run very good routes. So I'm a fan of Colston Loveland. And for the purpose of today's video, I just think he ended up in a better overall landing spot when you look at him going to the LA Chargers at pick 22. Keep in mind, right, Jim Harbaugh, coach Colston Loveland, coming out of Michigan. So I think that would be a great landing spot on a team that behind Ladd McConkey needs a lot of help in terms of potential pass catchers, right? So I think that this is a good landing spot for Loveland. At the end of the day, if you're more into those tight ends who go into the NFL as pure pass catchers, look at guys like Evan Ingram or Dalton Kincaid, like I mentioned earlier. At the end of the day, they can still have huge impacts on the game, but then sometimes they may fade out or potentially fade out, like we're seeing with Dalton Kincaid, due to certain schemes. We'll find out, and I still have some belief in Dalton Kincaid, by the way, but I think that the Chargers are a great landing spot overall for Loveland, like I've already said, right? You look at his past 2 seasons, 649 receiving yards in 2023 off of 45 catches, great there. 4 receiving touchdowns. Then this past year, 5 receiving touchdowns, had 56 catches off of 86 targets and 582 receiving yards. So, and that was with him playing 10 games compared to 15 games in 2023. So it's there in terms of receiving tight end. That's what he is. Good landing spot here. Still has a great draft profile overall, but he goes at the 1.11 for the purpose of today's video. All right, and last but not least, at the 1.12, we have Tyler Warren, also at the tight end position, this time landing with the Indianapolis Colts, which is a landing spot that I don't love. I don't hate it. But my problem with the Colts is, well, he's going to walk in and on paper be the tight end one and not have a ton of competition for targets. I know Pittman's there, Josh Downs is there, so that worries some people, but we saw some of the injury risk with both of those wide receivers last year. And Michael Pittman just did not have a great season. If you're still high on Josh Downs, that's fine. If you like Pittman as a sleeper this year, I think that's fine as well. But, there's not going to be a ton of competition for targets, and he should be the clear-cut tight end one. Jonathan Taylor going to get volume in this offense too. But nonetheless, right? I also kind of feel like the Colts are a place where the tight end position goes to die. It seems like every single time they draft a tight end, they end up doing nothing with their career. They have not had a good stretch of drafting the tight end position, right? I think Warren is a great prospect, so I think he could absolutely overcome that. I also just don't know what the Colts are exactly at this point offensively, right? Is Anthony Richardson going to be the quarterback next year? There are Colts fans out there who believe that the Colts might draft a quarterback, that they should absolutely draft a quarterback in the first round, should trade up for a quarterback or maybe get a guy like Jaxson Dart. Nonetheless, it's just hard to tell what the Colts are going to be, right? Like I said, is Anthony Richardson going to be the starter? I think most are assuming that they are going to give Anthony Richardson that shot. But like I said, some people don't think that. How healthy can Richardson stay? How healthy can Pittman and Downs stay? Is their head coach on the hot seat? It's just a weird place for this organization, which, look at the Raiders last year, kind of a similar type of situation, and that absolutely still worked out for Brock Bowers. So maybe none of that even matters. And maybe due to his college profile, he should be the first tight end taken in your draft. I'm okay with that. I would say with like 90% of other teams, I'm taking Warren in front of Loveland. I think the difference between the two is Warren is a little bit less athletic, but I mean, he's a do-everything tight end. He can block, he can fit into more schemes, and he still has athletic ability, right? He's good in terms of his route tree. His versatility isn't crazy, but he's definitely, I would still argue, my favorite tight end prospect coming out of this draft. Over 1,200 receiving yards in 2024, 8 receiving touchdowns, 104 receptions off 137 targets. So I think overall, Tyler Warren is just a different type of prospect here, maybe more of your quote unquote traditional tight end. While, like I said, Loveland is kind of that quote unquote like receiving tight end, but Warren can still get it done. Both are going to be good prospects. I just, in this circumstance, prefer the landing spot of the Chargers over the landing spot of the Colts. So we'll see what happens. But there are your two tight ends who are more than likely going to go in the first round of your upcoming rookie draft. And there you guys have it. There's my first rookie draft of this offseason for the upcoming 2025 Dynasty Fantasy Football season. So let me know in the comments down below, when is your guys' rookie draft? What picks do you guys have? Who are you guys targeting? And while you're at it, if you guys have any fantasy football questions whatsoever, drop me a comment down below. I will answer every single comment on this video as soon as I can. While you're down there, hit that like on the way out and be sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. We do year-round best ball, dynasty, and redraft fantasy football content here on the channel. With that, I'll say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch.